I'm Star Wars artist Will Sliney, and today we're drawing something out of this world. I'm not only drawing an epic illustration of, in my opinion, two of Star Wars' greatest characters, the Mandalorian Djarin himself and his protege Grogu, but I want to make an illustration that stands up against some of the greatest Star Wars artwork out there. And I'll explain how Star Wars created one of the most appealing and lovable designs in franchise history. This is Star Wars Illustrated, The Mandalorian and Grogu. I've drawn hundreds of pages of Star Wars comics for Marvel over the years. Each story has always needed a different approach when laying out the pages. Here, I really want to focus on our two heroic characters and create something spectacular. Star Wars is known for its incredible poster art. Whether it's illustrations by Drew Struzan or this incredible poster designed by Ellen Lee, we can learn so much by studying these pieces of art. So let's take a look at this poster from A New Hope by the Hildebrandt brothers. The composition relies on this pyramid shape with Luke at the peak of the triangle. This triangular design is a common Renaissance technique used to create stability and strength. You can not only see it here, but across all of these different Star Wars posters. Then, in a style that we see in a lot of Star Wars illustrations, a large Vader appears looming above them all. I wonder if I can take some of these incredible design elements, illustration techniques that have been passed down from artists since the Renaissance to help us lay out our art. There is a magic feeling to starting a drawing when you know the layout. By lightly sketching in the characters, you begin to tell the story of the piece, creating something that will live in the world of Star Wars forever. Now we have two heroic characters to focus on today, so I'm going to use this triangular design in order to give us full body figures for this illustration. Then, as I really want to keep our characters the heroes of the piece, let's add in some large looming portraits of Mando and Grogu at either side. Behind them, we'll have the unique shape of the Razor Crest, which if I tilt it up, it will create another triangular shape to help us reinforce that design, which is quite lucky based on its shape. Lastly, let's use the environments and color to bring all of the attention back into our center at our lead characters. Since our earliest glimpses of Boba Fett in the Star Wars galaxy in The Empire Strikes Back, fans have been captivated by the mystery of his people, the Mandalorians. Warriors forged in Beskar and bound by honor, their story was only whispered until the Clone Wars pulled back their curtain. The Disney Plus original series takes us deeper into Mandalorian lore than ever before. Introduced in the very first moments of The Mandalorian, Din Djarin is the fiercely independent bounty hunter the galaxy comes to know simply as Mando. When we first encounter him, he's in his element, calm, efficient and relentless, collecting a bounty with a practiced precision only ever seen amongst the most seasoned of hunters. Above all the rules of his creed, the Children of the Watch, there is one that is most sacred. A Mandalorian must never remove their helmet in the presence of others. To do so is to forfeit everything, your clan, your name, and your place amongst its people. It's a rule that Mando lives by until a single mission and a single child changes everything. This is the way. Before I draw Mando's iconic helmet, let's take a look at drawing shape and form. The more I understand the shapes, the more I'll be able to draw the helmet. I'm going to start by thinking of the visor first, using this as the anchor point for all of the lines. If I were to draw it onto this flat piece of paper, it would look like this. So if I pick up this piece of paper and add a curve to it, then it shows us how we can apply this flat design onto a curve. So I can draw a cylinder, and with a bit of practice, I can draw one at any single angle. And now I understand how to apply the visor onto this three-dimensional shape. It's not too hard then to add in half of a sphere on top of my cylinder. With thinking of this as a helmet with these two simple shapes, it's now a whole lot easier to draw it at any angle. Comic book artists have some great tricks to draw form and texture. To do so, we use light and shade. We can make this two-dimensional circle look like a three-dimensional sphere just by adding in some shadows. But how do we change the feel of that object? Well, if it was made of rock, we could take out a few chips with these shadows and add in a few scratches. Easy. If it was wood, we could draw in the grain. For metal like Beskar, you're not actually shading the object itself, you're drawing the distorted reflection of the environment around it. Pretty much every shape should be drawn as a curve when it's on a sphere, and often a lot of deep, dark shadows will end up right beside some bright highlights. We still can have our light source by drawing less concentrated shadows in that area. If I want this to feel really shiny, then I'll even break the edge line at its brightest point. This is telling the viewer that the light is brighter than the defining edge of that object. Then I can pop off some lines from that point, which can achieve this blinding specularity, which is what happens to light when you squint your eyes while looking at it. I'll keep this in mind as I'm drawing all of the armour. If it's a flatter surface, like the chest piece, it's just as reflective, but it's just not reflecting as many things. Think of how many things you can see reflected in a mirror versus how many you can see on a reflective glass ball. Remember too, this is armour worn by a guy who tends to get into a lot of battles, and Beskar, despite it being so protective, can still pick up bits of dirt and a few little scratches from the environment and from things like darksabers. So every so often when drawing it, I'll put in the smallest of imperfect edges and these ever so small little circles. An elemental metal born in the heart of Mandalore that's capable of withstanding almost all attacks, even those of a lightsaber. Few materials inspire fear and reverence quite like Beskar. Its defensive properties have shaped centuries of legend and war. In The Mandalorian, we see that for Mando, reclaiming Beskar is not about building wealth, but about restoring identity. For every plate protects its wearer with the weight and history of Mandalore itself. Mandalorians use sigils to represent lineage, clan allegiances, specific factions, or personal achievements. The most commonly used is the image of the mythosaur, an ancient beast that long ago dominated the planet Mandalore. Clan Vizsla had a Shriekhawk in a diving pose worn by Paz and Pre Vizsla. By changing the slick, smooth lines to a rugged, edgy style, the symbol eventually changed into the symbol for Deathwatch, a radical terrorist splinter group that tried to overthrow the pacifist new Mandalorian government. For Mando, it's not quite as exotic as an ancient mythosaur. His symbolizes his battle alongside Grogu with the Mudhorn. Mando earned the Mudhorn signet after killing a massive beast in order to obtain its egg. Though Mando was the one to deliver the final blow, he was only able to do so because Grogu halted the creature's attack by force levitating it. The armourer forged the symbol onto Mando's shoulder armour to symbolize the bond between them as a clan of two. Forged in shadow by Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian to be inducted into the Jedi Order, the blade is a bridge between two ancient warrior cultures. Among Mandalorians, the blade is a revered symbol of leadership. To wield it is not enough, it must be earned in combat. Only then can its bearer claim the right to rule. When I draw a lightsaber, we have a core of powerful white light that when it's blue, green, purple, yellow, or even red, it's only at the edges that we see the colour. To draw the dark saber, I need to take that and invert it in every way with a dark core. In contrast to a lightsaber, that very core is a flat, curved blade much like a katana. As I fill in the dark core, I can draw the light edges that bleed into it like small specks of thunder. These add to the raw, powerful feel of the sword. Now it's time to switch characters, from a mask-wearing, metal-covered warrior to a small, force-wielding ward, Grogu. Known at first only as the child, Grogu is introduced not with words but with mystery. When we first see him, he's seemingly helpless, small and silent, an unexpected target at the end of a dangerous bounty. Yet from the moment he appears, it's clear there's far more to this child than meets the eye. Grogu's over 50 years old, a race that we assume both Jedi Master Yoda and Yaddle belong to. His past is fragmented and painful. Despite his size, Grogu possesses immense force potential, capable of healing mortal wounds, levitating massive creatures, and defending those he cares for. Yet his power is driven not by ambition or anger, but by instinct and emotion. He's curious, playful, and deeply attached to those who show him kindness. Through his bond with Mando, Grogu finds something he's lost for decades: safety. What begins as a bounty becomes family, and in the presence of a lone Mandalorian, the child becomes more than a mystery. He becomes hope. To draw Grogu's face, there are two base shapes to start off with, one for the head and one for the ears. Instead of a simple oval for the head, let's add some character to that shape by altering it just a little. Take a look at this. Grogu's a miracle of a design. He's over 50 years old, green-skinned and covered in wrinkles, yet you could say he's the most adorable design in the history of television. Here's how they did it. You would think that dark eyes, and I mean almost black eyes, could look quite evil. Let's test that out. Let's draw Grogu's eye with a large pupil, and I'll shade in a lot of the iris, as if it's a dark brown, so we can just barely make out some of the light areas. His iris will pretty much fill up most of the eye. If a white part of that eye had a bright highlight, we'd barely see it, but when the white highlight is on the darker area, then it will really pop. The more of the dark area that we have, the more white highlights we can see. This triggers something deep down in us subconsciously. It makes the eyes seem wetter than usual, that the character is a little sad, so we feel for them and we care for them, without really knowing why. This is what's meant by puppy dog eyes. They have those huge dark irises and there are reflections popping off their eyes from every direction. The utilitarian silhouette of the Razor Crest marks it as a workhorse of a ship, matching the unstoppable work ethic of its pilot and owner Mando. Its lived-in aesthetic reflects decades of wear and tear, and it's as much of an extension of Mando as it is a means of travelling throughout the galaxy. Its destruction marked an inflection point, not just for Mando's means of travel, but for his life. Now, he'd need others if he wanted to survive, ending his isolation and the beginning of something much, much bigger. Now it's all about putting in the smaller details, taking the time to draw in smaller shaped cylinders and rectangles and planing them all off into these mechanical shapes. We can use a lot of our usual armor techniques, but the Razor Crest is not made of Beskar, and despite Mando's best efforts, it's going to pick up a lot of bumps and scratches. And here it is, the iconic Mandalorian and Grogu composing a piece of art that was laid out using techniques developed nearly 1,000 years ago. Whenever I draw a piece of art for Star Wars, I'll pencil and ink it, which brings it to this black and white line art stage. So for one final step, here are our colours by the incredible Rochelle Rosenberg. When you're creating a piece of art, you're standing on the shoulders of some of the greatest artists from centuries ago with every layout that you do. And when you're drawing Star Wars art, you're working with designs made from some of the best concept artists out there, appearing almost as iconic as Mando and Grogu themselves. Thanks for following along into this deep dive of this creation of this piece of art and our two heroes.